Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday evening Parent Academy webinar session. Thank you for joining us. And again, we're excited to have you as audience listeners and participants. I am Tina Folston Hayes, the Parent Academy Specialist for Educational Equity and Outreach for the Alachua County Public Schools, and I welcome you this evening. Tonight, we will receive some helpful information from our guest speaker, Miss Christie of the parentguidance.org. And she's going to provide some information on mental health for us tonight. And just before we get started, let's review some housekeeping elements. Please keep your microphones on mute for the duration of the presentation. We will be monitoring your questions and responses accordingly. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the webinar window. And please note that all Parent Academy webinars are closed captioned, recorded, and posted to our website for access at a later date or re-review for any individuals who could not tune in live tonight. Your questions will be answered at the conclusion of each session. If there is a specific need for a personal conversation, the Parent Academy's email address is parentacademy@gm.sbac.edu. And we will get to those questions and your requests for additional information forwarded to the correct Alachua County Public School member or community member. And now, without further ado, I would like to present our guest speaker for this evening, Miss Christie. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, Tina, for that introduction, and welcome all you parents, caregivers, and parent coaches. My name is Christy Wiley, and I am with parentguidance.org. I'm going to be your facilitator this evening. And as we're waiting for everybody to get in, would love for you to join us at menti.com at code 58142815. This is how we're going to be able to interact this evening. And tonight, since we're talking about substance abuse and vaping in particular, there's going to be a lot of quizzes and ways to interact. So I hope everybody will go to that. Just use your phone to scan that QR code. It'll take you right where you need to be. Or you can go to menti.com and type in code 58142815. And when you get in there, everybody, if you will give me a thumbs up, that lets me know that you're in Menti and we're ready to go. And just know that this is our primary means of communication, and everything is anonymous. So when you participate in Menti, it doesn't have your name, and that's because we want to create a safe environment for everyone. So thank you for that thumbs up, and we'll encourage you to do that as we get going. But just want to welcome you to the parentguidance.org mental health series. Again, my name is Christy, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. I'd like to thank Dr. Edwards, the Chief of Equity, for bringing parentguidance.org into your school and for planning for these discussions to help you help your child. So also again, Miss Tina Folston Hayes said hello to us at the beginning. So thank you, Tina, for being here. Today's discussion is going to center around substance use and vaping. And we have two therapists, Shannon Clausen and Dr. Kevin Skinner, who've helped us create today's presentation. They're going to be presenting information to us today based on their research and all of their experience working with families and teens. Shannon Clausen is a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in emotionally focused therapy. And Dr. Kevin Skinner is the clinical director at parentguidance.org and holds a doctorate degree in marriage and family therapy. So today, addressing concerns around substance abuse, the health issues from vaping, and possible mental and emotional influences on your child. We're going to discuss some of the facts behind e-cigarettes, and we're going to look at behavioral changes to watch for in your child if you suspect vaping or substance use. And Shannon is also going to talk to us about how to talk to your teen and just again point out those signs to watch for if your child may be addicted to substances. But as always, as we get started, we like to find out more about you who is with us. So what age are your kiddos? Do you have elementary, middle, high school, or even older adults, children in the house? I will tell you that I am a mommy to a 6th grader. We're almost through the 6th grade year, and I am so glad. I remember 6th grade being so hard for me. We're almost done with 6th grade. So I'm with you middle school parents out there, but it looks like we have mostly high school on this evening. So glad that all of you are here. So today we want to share with you the facts. We're going to start out by hearing from Dr. Clausen, who is a therapist at Addo Recovery. She's going to share some statistics about teens and vaping.
Hi, I'm Shannon Clausen. I'm a marriage and family therapist at Addo, and today we're going to be talking about vaping, teen vaping, and how to figure out is your child vaping? Are they addicted to vaping? And what can you do about it? Where can you turn to for answers and support? The number of teens vaping is increasing at an alarming rate. A recent CDC report estimates that 27.5% of teens have used e-cigarettes in the last 30 days, which is up from 20.8% in 2018. That's an alarming statistic. And the way vaping is being marketed to our teens presents it as something that's fun and do it with your family and do it with your friends. And these ads would also have you believe that it's not that dangerous and that it is healthier than cigarette smoking. And that is absolutely not the case. Most vaping pods contain nicotine that is more concentrated than in cigarettes. For example, 1 Juul pod contains as much nicotine as 1 pack of cigarettes. That is scary as a parent. I remember the first time that I came to realize that my son was vaping. It was early in the morning and I had gone down to his bedroom and he was asleep, and I found this, I didn't even know what it was, this tool or instrument in his hands, and I thought it was drugs or something. And I was able to pick it up. I happened to have a therapy appointment that day. I took it to my therapist and I said, "What is this?" And he said, "Oh, that's an e-cigarette." And I was scared. I was quite alarmed. I didn't know how to talk to my 18-year-old son about it at the time. And so I hope that some of the things that we're going to talk about right now will help you be better prepared if you should ever encounter a moment like that.
All right, so by now you've probably been around someone who vapes, but maybe you didn't even realize it. Vaping is definitely easier to hide than smoking cigarettes, mainly due to the odor that is emitted. Sometimes we can smell cigarette smoke, but we can't smell the vaping liquid. And as Dr. Clausen said, vaping is marketed to our teens as fun. But the fact is that it is highly addictive and it should be taken very seriously. Research shows that e-cigarettes are being targeted to two distinct consumer groups, and that is the committed smoker and then young social smokers or non-smokers. Okay. So on our parent guidance website, we have an Ask a Therapist section where parents can post a question for our team of therapists to review and answer. And one parent asked the following question. It says, "We caught our 16-year-old son vaping and smoking pot. He says it's no big deal and doesn't know why we're so upset. What do we do?" So many parents are being faced with the "it's no big deal" type of response from their teens their teens today. Teens reach a stage in their development where they are becoming more independent, and that the influence their parents start to have on them starts to change. But before addressing difficult topics with your child, it's important to think first about the influence that you truly have on them. So let's hear from Dr. Skinner now about this concern and how parents should respond.
Hey, thank you for asking your question here at Parent Guidance. I'm Dr. Kevin Skinner. You say that you caught your 16-year-old vaping and smoking pot these days. It's no big deal and doesn't know why we're so upset, or he says it's no big deal and why are we so upset? What should we do? I think, first of all, the question that I ask any parent is, can you have influence on your child? Because our children often, as they get older, 16, 17 years old, they kind of become a little bit more self-focused, and they see the world around their lens. And truthfully, they're at this stage where it's like, I'm going to be myself. I got my own identity. I'm going to be me. So I wonder if you can have influence or not. And so that's the first question. Can I have influence? If I can have influence, how am I going to communicate to my child in a way that lets him know my concerns? I think it's important that you do some education, if at all possible. Do some research on vaping and ask him to watch that with you, and then see if you can get him to open up. I think you as a parent have to be open about the possibility that you might not be able to have a lot of influence here. And so the only way we find that we have influence is we can develop a relationship first. If we can have a connection, a conversation, without him feeling judged or, why are you so upset about this? But more of approaching this of, I'm trying to understand, help me understand. And then ultimately is the ability to say, here are some of my concerns. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to stop you, but I do have concerns. And I would let him know of your personal values, beliefs, and concerns, and let him know that this matters to you and that you care about him and you care about his health. And certainly the research is showing, especially with some vaping, that there's some significant things that are happening that I think if you do a little bit of research, you might be able to share that with your son and say, hey, here's some of the concerns. And the same thing with pot. I know it's growing in terms of its usage around the United States and Canada, but I think it's fair to say, we don't know the influence of this.
So Dr. Skinner brought up a few important points that I want you to ask yourself. Can you have an influence on your child? Do you have that open line of communication with them where you can talk openly about things? So that's just something to think about first as we go through the remainder of this session tonight. But my next question is in Menti. At what age do you feel is most appropriate to address vaping with your child? We know that the sooner you start talking to your child, the better. And we know parents have more influence on their child in their younger years. There is a misconception that vapes are just flavors and steam. And I'll tell you, when they first came out, that's what I believe too, but that's not true. Vaping is highly addictive. Okay. So a lot of you say it's most important to address vaping from 5 to 10. And I agree with you. If we can start talking about the things that are harmful and hurtful to our bodies when our kids are younger, they might listen, a little more, especially when we have more influence. If you wait till your child is 13 to talk about this stuff, it may be too late. But by talking to them at a younger age, this is also how you create these open lines of communication and continue to have influence. Again, the younger you start, the more also they have the tools and knowledge to make the right decision when they're faced with these opportunities. But next, Dr. Skinner is going to explore the social aspects parents should consider if their teen is vaping nicotine or marijuana. So let's discuss this with Dr. Skinner now.
You also want to look at the friends that he's with, because we know that social influence has a big influence on our own children. So is there a group, or is he doing it by himself? Now, there's two important things here. If it's with a group, then there's a social expectation. If he's doing it by himself, he's probably coping with things that we don't know what those are, but he's coping with something that's going on. Is he being bullied? Is he being pressured? Is he being made fun of? Whatever the story may be, those are things that I would want to know in order to really provide the best support as possible. And again, there's one other part here I would say. My experience based upon conversations I've had is that individuals who are vaping, smoking pot, something that happens to them is that they begin to either disconnect from certain groups or they connect with other groups. And I would want to make sure that we focus on the relationship, your relationship, and see if we can help him understand that, he can have relationships that are positive, and those relationships often they end because there's other problems that are going on.
So Dr. Skinner reminds us we want to analyze and look at our child's social circles. Have they had a shift in their relationships, either by joining a group or leaving a group that they used to associate with? Okay. So next, we're going to explore more about how to know if your child is vaping by analyzing some of their health issues, which may give you a sign. So let's go through some of these signs with Dr. Clausen now.
So how do you know if your teen is vaping? Well, one of the first things you want to be aware of is their health condition. What's happening with their health? For example, you may notice that they are having increased cough, shortness of breath. They may be struggling with symptoms of bronchitis or increased mucus. Those can all be signs of vaping. Not that it necessarily is only vaping, but they are things to look for, to give consideration to. When heated, the vape juice turns into an aerosol, which contains the same toxic chemicals found in cigarette smoke. And when this is exposed to the lungs, it is toxic. Toxic particles, cancer-causing particles, are being ingested into the lungs. In addition, some other health concerns to look for, or maybe your teen is experiencing increased nosebleeds or thirsty, and even a change in their sleep patterns, can all be indications of vaping possibilities. Again, not that that would be the sole reason for those things, but it is something to consider. Another health issue to be concerned about is nicotine poisoning, or your teen becoming nic sick. Some of the symptoms to watch for related to this condition are abdominal cramps, agitation, restlessness or confusion, breathing difficulty, burning sensations in the mouth or drooling, seizures, fainting or even coma, and headaches. Those are some things to watch for. If you notice those symptoms, talk to your teen. Ask them if they are aware that these things are happening, or talk to your teen's doctor. Those are some of the health issues you should be watching for related to teen vaping. Next, we're going to look at some of the common behavioral issues related to teen vaping.
Okay, so not only is vaping harmful to the user's lungs, secondhand emissions from e-cigarettes are harmful as well. Again, many people think that the secondhand vapor is just water or steam, but it couldn't be further from the truth. The vapor emitted when someone exhales contains a variety of dangerous substances. So it is so important to talk to your child about the true side effects of these substances. They might be assuming too that the exhaled vape is just water, but educate your child to the reality of the side effects, which Dr. Clausen mentioned: seizures, headaches, how it affects their brain development. You know, research does show that it affects concentration and it slows memory, and those can be long-term effects. In fact, the American Lung Association states that e-cigarette use among youth has reached epidemic levels. And according to a 2022 study, 20% of high school students and 5% of middle school students reported current e-cigarette use. In fact, more than 1 in 4 teenagers used e-cigarettes daily just last year in 2022, and that's over 2.5 million teenagers being affected. Okay. For the past 60 years, we have known cigarettes were bad, but it's a different matter when it comes to vaping. So look at this graph that outlines the usage of cigarettes compared to e-cigarettes and Juuls. And these are alarming, but real statistics. And the struggle of this generation with vaping is becoming a crisis. I told you that my daughter's in the 6th grade, and she'll often come home and talk to me about the kids vaping in the bathroom, or, you know, hiding it from teachers. So it's a very real and persistent thing. According to the World Health Association, there's been a small but steady decrease in the number of cigarette smokers globally to just over 1 billion, but it's a different matter when it comes to vaping. So in 2011, globally, there were only 5 million vapors. Now there are over 55 million people using these products. Okay. All right. So after decades of research on cigarette smoking, we know the damage it causes, and vaping is no different. It just isn't good for anyone's health. We're going to go back to that question, that parent question from the Ask a Therapist section, and Dr. Skinner's response. He's going to reply to the parent's concern around their child vaping. He's also going to address some reasons why they are choosing to smoke pot or vape. If a teen is not using because of social influences, what about the mental or emotional reasons? So let's listen to Dr. Skinner now.
Is your son possibly vaping or using pot to slow down his mind? Is he anxious? Does he have ADHD? Now, the reason why I ask that is sometimes the anxious ADHD mind sometimes will use pot to slow down their mind because they're so anxious. So that's something that you might consider as you think about this. Now, obviously, if you can't have influence, or if you're concerned at a deeper level, then I would consider professional counseling to make sure that you and your son are getting proper support to talk about this in a real meaningful way, because I think there is a proper reason and a reason to be concerned.
Okay, so most smokers say they want to stop, but they continue smoking because it seems to relieve stress and anxiety. And it's a common belief that smoking helps you relax, okay? But smoking actually increases anxiety and tension. Smokers are also more likely than non-smokers to develop depression over time. So if your child says, you know, don't worry, it helps me relax and this is why I need it, it's important to know and let them know that their substance use may be causing that anxiety or tension or stress. And it could cause, you know, other issues as deep as depression or severe anxiety. So as parents, we try to be aware, you know, of all that's going on in our homes and our child's life. And at parentguidance.org, we want you to know the facts. What we're sharing today is only the very basic information. So I encourage you to do some more research if this topic is affecting your child in particular. You know, that way you can have some informed conversations with your teen. But do you know the difference between e-cigarettes, Juuls, and vape pens? E-cigarettes, originally, they looked similar to traditional cigarettes, and they were designed to be thrown away just after one use. Okay. But now they're sometimes called e-cigs, e-hookahs, mods, vape pens, vapes, tank systems, and ENDS, which stands for electronic nicotine delivery systems. Okay, so that's e-cigarettes. Juul pods and vape pens are another form of e-cigarette that are very popular. So let's liken them to computers. Mac and PC are both computers, but provide a different experience for the user. So when we're talking about either Juul pods or vape pens, they're the same, but they provide a different experience, okay? So both Juul pods and vape pens contain nicotine, and that's the highly addictive chemical also found in cigarettes. So the most popular e-cigarette among teens is a Juul. So Juul, because of its simplicity to use. All Juul pods do contain some nicotine, something that many youth may not realize. According to the manufacturer, one Juul pod may contain as much nicotine as one entire pack of cigarettes, okay? And Juuls provide only 2 levels of nicotine options, 3% or 5%, okay? And to compare, a pack of cigarettes, a whole pack of cigarettes contain about 5% of nicotine. Juul is very similar to a cigarette, and people who are looking to quit smoking often prefer Juul because of those high nicotine concentration levels. So a vape pen, on the other hand, it lends itself to more customization to the amount of nicotine and also flavor based on the preference of the user. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you some common items that you may have seen around your home. On your phones in Menti, I'd love you to mark yes if you think it is a vape device or no if you do not, okay? And once you answer each of these questions, we'll talk more about it. So this looks like a flash drive. Some of you say no. And what about this highlighter marker? Do you think that is a vape device or not? So in Menti, let me know what you think. So the last one was that flash drive. This is a highlighter, okay? The next one, what about this that looks like a phone case? Is that a vape device? What do you think? Okay. And then what about this? Looks like an inhaler for someone who may have asthma. Okay, so does that look like a vape device to you? What do you think? And then 2 more items to look at. This is a computer adapter looking plug. Okay, what do you think that is for? Okay, do you think it's a vape device? And then the last one we're going to look at is this hoodie. Okay, most of all of our kids have a hoodie. In fact, that's all my child wants to wear. But is this hoodie a vape device? And if you answered yes to all, they are all vape devices. So these marketers are getting very good at helping teens and children hide these. So if you've seen any of these items lying around your house, you might not be suspicious. These are common household items. So maybe a phone case, a highlighter, a flash drive, an adapter, okay? But they are vape devices. So these devices can have the appearance of any of these items, and most e-liquids have flavors in them that usually smell nice, like candy or mint or vanilla, fruit punch, strawberry, right? I was at the movies recently, and I started to smell this faint, like strawberry odor, and I looked around me, and someone behind me was vaping all during the movie. So it's around us, whether we realize it or not. So I was really surprised by some of these parents. And I told you my daughter, she's talked about these highlighter vapes before. So check highlighters. It's so strange. All right. So now that you're learning how to be a detective, watching for behavioral changes, health changes, and even sniffing out pleasantly surprising or pleasantly sweet odors, what else should you watch for? Have you noticed a change in your child's behavior? Okay, so Dr. Clausen is going to talk to us about the behavioral issues that nicotine causes that you'll want to consider when you're observing your child's behavior to see if they are using vape pens. So let's watch now.
Because a teen's brain is not fully developed, they are highly vulnerable to nicotine. Nicotine is an ingredient in all vaping substances, and it can cause extreme agitation, anxiety, depression, and irritability. Also, nicotine can contribute to impulsive or reckless behaviors, and it also can interfere with your teen's ability to concentrate and their memory. Another behavioral change to look for is a sudden change in your child's academic performance at school. If their grades start to go down, if they're scoring lower on tests, maybe missing assignments, or even being tardy or absent from school, and this is uncharacteristic for them, that might be a sign that something could be going on, possibly vaping. Another consideration is if there's any change in your child's friends, their friend group, their peer group that they hang out with. This could also indicate that something is changing. Oftentimes, if their friends are vaping, then that increases the likelihood that your child will too. So who are your children hanging out with? Be on the lookout for unfamiliar objects around the house. Vaping devices come in all kinds of unique shapes and sizes. Some look like USB drives, some are like pipes, some look like electronic cigarettes, and most of them take rechargeable batteries. If you see unfamiliar batteries or charging devices around your home, that might make you curious about where they came from. The way that these companies market to teens is they get quite creative. They've even come out with hoodies where the strings of the hoodies are vaping devices as well. So be curious and be aware of what you see laying around the house. Also, be concerned about unusual smells that you might notice in your home. If you can't detect the source of a smell or where it's coming from, it's possible it could be coming from a vaping device. Always trust your instincts. You know your child better than anyone. If you're sensing that something is off or something is up, you're probably right. And ask your child about it.
Yeah. So as parents, we all have these natural instincts. So trust your instincts. If you think something is going on, look into it deeper, ask questions, observe behaviors, watch for any sudden changes in the child's behavior or even a change in their friends. Be aware of unfamiliar smells, even if they smell good. So now, what if you discover that your teen is vaping or using substances? Okay, so, or maybe you already know that they are. How do you talk to your teen about your concerns? So Shannon's going to address that with us next.
So what can you do if you think your teen is vaping or has a vaping addiction? Talk to them. Have a conversation with them. Not a lecture, but a conversation. That means that both of you are going to be talking, and hopefully your teen is doing most of the talking. This would indicate they feel comfortable opening up and sharing with you. Create space for them to talk. The conversation doesn't need to be long. It can happen incrementally, a little at a time. Sometimes our teens don't have the bandwidth to have long, drawn-out conversations, but a few minutes here and a few minutes there can get the point across and lead to more conversations. Also, look for the right timing. Sometimes it's scary if you approach your teen and say, hey, we need to talk. Make it natural. Maybe the conversation comes up when you see an ad for tobacco or vaping on TV, or maybe when you pass by a vaping store or see someone vaping. All of those incidents create a natural conversation. Starting a conversation with a question could be an easy route to go. You might ask your teen, how popular is vaping at your school? Do your friends vape? Have you ever considered vaping? Do you have any questions about vaping? One of the most important things to remember in your communication with your teens is not to criticize them and don't speak over them. Hear what they have to say, hear their opinion. Create a space where they can openly share with you and feel heard. Take time to hear their perspective and understand their motivation for vaping or their interest in vaping. The more you understand and listen to them, the more you can build trust with them. Keep in mind that your teen might not be vaping just to get a high or for the thrill of it. Oftentimes, vaping is a symptom of underlying issues your teen might be struggling with. When you take the time to really listen to them and understand, hopefully they'll share what's going on.
Okay. So Dr. Clausen reminds us to take the time to listen and understand your child and their reasons for vaping. So get curious. The best approach is to help you understand, or I'm sorry, by getting curious, that's going to help you hear them, and that may help you understand why your child is doing this. And it may help them open up so you can understand maybe there's some underlying issues going on that you didn't know about. Stress, anxiety, bullying. Maybe that's why they started vaping. Okay, so be curious. So many teens overlook or underestimate a key ingredient in the vapors they inhale, and that's the nicotine. Nicotine can spell trouble at any stage of life, but it is particularly dangerous before the brain is fully developed, which happens around the age of 25. So what they're talking about is this prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. For girls, it's about 23, and for our young men, it's 25. So here are some other signs of addiction.
Some teens who vape may be able to stop on their own, and other teens may not. It may progress into addiction. So how do you know if your child has a vaping addiction? Here are some of the signs that you want to look for. Some of the signs that your teen may have a vaping addiction include if they feel anxious or irritable when they want to vape but can't. If thoughts about vaping interrupt when they are focused on other activities. If they continue to vape despite getting into trouble with parents or at school. If they have tried to stop vaping but couldn't. And if they feel like they've lost control over their vaping. All of those might be signs that your teen has a vaping addiction. If you think your teen does have a vaping addiction, it's possible that they might disagree with you. They might be in denial that some of those signs are present. Some things you can do in that situation are have your teen talk to other trusted adults, maybe a coach or a teacher that they admire, maybe a relative or a close family friend who is familiar with the harmful effects of vaping. Another idea might be to contact your child's doctor. The doctor could present some of the dangers of vaping, and having it come from a doctor may carry more weight with your teen. Another alternative is enroll your teen in a nicotine reduction or cessation group. Being with other teens who are struggling with the same thing that they're struggling with can help in reducing their vaping use. Also, you as the parent need support too. Parents can also join support groups. It is so healing and helpful to sit with other parents who are going through similar struggles like you are. Regardless of how mild or severe your teen's vaping use is, the important thing to remember is that it's treatable. There is hope. The earlier you take steps to treat your teen, the better.
All right. So what we know is denial is normal. Teens who downplay the hazards, that's normal. However, the rise in popularity doesn't make it any safer. If you suspect that your child is addicted, contact your medical doctor and get them the help that they need. It's not a matter of just telling them to stop, because depending on how far along, again, it could be this vaping addiction because they are addicted to the nicotine. So, being punished, or if I catch you doing this again, that can be different when there's an addiction. All right. So let's listen to some final thoughts from Dr. Clausen and some things to keep in mind.
One thing to keep in mind as a parent, we want to do everything we possibly can do for our children to set them up for success. Something to consider, though, is agency. It's not just our will at play here, but it's also the will of our child. And we can't always go against that. If we force them to do something that they're unwilling to do, it can wreak havoc on the relationship, sometimes to the point of being irreparable, and it can cause great strain on the family too. In my own experience, my son was unwilling to stop his vaping. It did turn into vaping addiction. He has had health problems, but he doesn't vape in secret. He vapes in front of me. It's accepted that this is what he does and this is what he's chosen. And I love him and have a relationship with him in spite of the poor decisions that he's made. Always, above all, we need to love our teens and let them know.
So regardless of how you feel about your child's substance use, it's important to remember that they are your child, regardless of their choices, and that you love them. Create that loving and supporting relationship with your child and strive to keep those lines of communication open so that you can continue to be there for your child when they need you the most. So in Minty, take a moment to reflect. I'd love for you to share what is more natural for you. How do you handle tough conversations with your kids? Do you just not talk about it? Do you have seldom long and deep conversations, or do you have frequent short conversations? So Dr. Clausen shared about the importance of frequently talking about tough topics. And as we mentioned earlier, the earlier and the younger you can start these conversations, the better. Okay. So with that said, again, we might need some more help. And at the Cook Center for Human Connection, we're driven by the mission of bringing together resources that have demonstrated effectiveness in creating the human connections that are vital for strong mental wellness. And one of those resources is parentguidance.org. Again, it's a free resource to you that's backed by therapists. And on parentguidance.org, they share different courses for parents on mental health topics. So I just want to share with you quickly some of those resources that are available. So when you go, you'll want to log in to gain access to the resources, and you'll start here and create your own profile. There's no payment information. This is free to you. They just want to make sure you have a username and password so you can keep track of the courses that you take. Also, in this session, we talked a lot about some of the Ask a Therapist questions that are in this section. This is Dr. Kevin Skinner, and many of the parentguidance.org faculty members have answered questions, including Jenna Ramirzma, who's done the series on anxiety. So here you can look and see if another parent has had your question. Okay, and look at that answer. If you have your own question, you can go right down here to the thought bubble and you can ask your question there. Next is the courses section. And again, this is my favorite. And that's because I know all different families are going through all sorts of different types of issues. So this series not only helps us understand our child's development and their brain development and emotional development, but when you scroll down, there is a library of topics where you can choose what maybe you would like to learn more about. So maybe it is grief, maybe it is perhaps self-harm or even suicidal ideation or anxiety, but you choose from all these courses here. So as we close out tonight's section, I'd love to hear from you. What are some things that you might remember from this conversation? What are some things that you might remember? I'm always interested to see, the new things that some of these marketers come up with, but the hoodie was something that I was like, what? But yeah. And then when I told y'all that my daughter told me about those highlighters, and I was amazed. But yeah, I appreciate all of you being here with us today and for letting us know some of your feedback. Your next session is going to be social media, protecting your child. That's going to be on May 25th. So if you would like to schedule your session, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you right to the registration. And remember to go ahead and register because it will send you reminders, but then also it will send you a reminder for the recordings of these videos. So that's on May 25th at 6 p.m. All right, everybody. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. If this has been meaningful to you, I hope that you'll share it with a friend. And again, thank you to Dr. Edwards, who's the Chief of Equity, for making parentguidance.org, the mental health series, and our time together possible. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Tina. Thank you again for having us this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Listen, this was so informative. I did not realize that the nicotine was there. Like, I thought it was just, just something to put up to your mouth. You know what I mean? I did not know.
I thought that too, Tina. I thought it was when they first all came out, it was all, oh, it's just water and like liquid and it smells good. No, it's got it's got a lot of nicotine in there. So yeah.
Literally, I'm like mind blown. I was like, whoa, I did not realize. And then all of these different things that they use to disguise it.
Yes.
It's like, how, I'm literally like stunned.
Yeah. Well, my daughter even came home, it might have been this week, but she said, hey, Mom, all the vapors got their stock resupplied. And I was like, what does that mean? And she said, yeah, that they resupply and then they come and they sell it at the school. And that's what they do it in the bathrooms and things. So, and she's in the 6th grade, right? So
My God.
it's,
My God.
it's there. And again, oh, it's just water. No, it's not.
Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of these kids don't even realize what it is that they're doing. Like, I don't even think that they probably even think twice unless something happens to a close friend or, something like that to where they could be like, oh yeah, and they were vaping. And vaping is bad because this is what it did. Like when it said that it caused seizures and headaches, and I'm like, my
Yeah.
goodness,
Yeah.
my
And some
goodness.
of those vape pens, they have the oil cartridges, and it's actually marijuana. So it could,
Mm.
it could be the marijuana oil as well as just the smell good nicotine stuff. So what I thought was interesting is that if you start to see any chargers that you don't know what they are and what they're for, you may take a look.
Right. Wrap them up and take them with you. And
Yeah.
so for the parents that are still on with us, you can definitely go to the Q&A section if there's any questions or comments that you may have. So that way Ms. Christie can answer them or respond to them for you. But I really appreciate you coming on and you guys hosting this type of session because I'm literally like, wow, wow. In
Well,
6th grade.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you heard that puppy just bark, but they said get a dog, they said, so she's here listening, and she's like, yeah, she'll come and tell me. And but it just goes to the fact, I started talking to her. I'm a single mom too, and she's an only child.
Mhm.
So we started having these kind of conversations super early. But so she'll talk to me about some of the things that are going on, but it's real and it's scary out there. And so I just think if we can just talk and be open and start having these conversations, age appropriately, we might be able to have
Yeah.
some more influence, be that angel on their shoulder when they do, because they will get offered it at school.
Yeah.
They do. Oh, she's saying I have. So
like a couple of days ago.
Oh my goodness.
wow. So
And see, that is just that. I mean, and I, I guess that's something that I know is possible, but just to know how you can disguise it, and I see my daughter is 3, and she'll walk around with something in her because she puts everything in her mouth. That's
yeah,
just what they do.
yeah,
But to know that a highlighter, something like a highlighter, could be, you know, a vape pen. Like,
yeah.
wow, my goodness. Ah,
Well, I am right there with you. And again, we're just so glad that we can be here. We're so thankful for y'all for helping us bring this series. And the one on May 25th, that
yeah,
social media one, is going to open up your eyes too. So, I mean, there are some
my
things
goodness.
I have no idea.
I'm gonna
These
try to prepare myself.
yeah, prepare yourself, but it's like, the more so it's about parents being educated, and this is a great partnership, and parentguidance.org is there to help educate. But
Yes, yes. And I thank you so much. I thank you so much for every week you guys bring, well, every Thursday, the 4th Thursday of the month. I'm so glad that you guys bring so many great conversations to us and can enlighten us about so many things that we probably didn't even
yeah,
think about, or how to navigate and move through for our kids. So that's wonderful.
yeah. Well, you're welcome.
And I
We're so
don't
Oh, is there anybody else on? Or there's a couple
um
people on, but yeah.
yeah, and I don't see any questions or comments or
Okay.
anything. So let me ask you this. Does this affect adults the same way that it affects the teens?
Well, so what was so interesting is that they've done those studies that smokers, and my parents were smokers, and it was always like, when I'm stressed out, I want a cigarette. But actually, the
Mhm.
studies have shown that the nicotine actually increases anxiety and stress. So it's kind of this catch 22. You're thinking it's helping you, but it may be that thing that's increasing it.
Wow.
And then as far as, and then addiction is addiction, whether it's food or nicotine or, whatever it could be. Addiction is tough. And that's why, it's so hard as parents if your teen has gotten to the point where it's not just casual use and it's an addiction, that does need that extra step of help to go to a teen group that's meeting and doing that. But as far as teens too, you asked about, it really does affect that prefrontal cortex and that brain development. And I think a lot of kids don't know that. So it's like, it's affecting how
Mm-mm.
your brain works, and but that's absolutely true. But then for
Wow.
adults, it is that increased anxiety, and it can lead to depression.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Well,
And
thank
all
you
the
for answering that
unhealthy like
question.
lung stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we already know, and cancer. So but yeah.
Whoa. Well, thank you so much
You're
again.
welcome.
I appreciate that. I don't see anyone that has any questions. And so what we'll do is make sure that if anyone contacts me in the meantime to get this presentation or to find out where you can find the information, that I'll definitely pass it on to you. But it is recorded, and so you guys that are on here can go back and look at it, even if you want to look at it with your team.
Yeah.
You can do that because sometimes I think as parents, when we talk to our kids, they don't, you don't know mom, you don't know dad, or you know what I mean? Because we just haven't lived long enough, I guess. And so, maybe they need to have something like this to open up that conversation to say, let's watch this together,
Yeah.
and then we can have that conversation because I think it is so important for our kids to know the safety of what they're involved in or what their friends are involved in. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to take a hit of that
Yeah.
because it's not just, you know,
Yeah.
water.
It's not
So I
just
wonder if
water.
hookah is the same thing. Do you
I,
know if
I'm
hookah
I
like
know
falls in
know
line
about
with that?
hookah, but I don't know enough about it to, I mean, I don't know enough about hookah to answer that, but I think regardless, it's all tobacco. The device that they use has to have some sort of smoke or liquid to heat it up, or I guess. I don't want to speak like I know something I don't know, but yeah, it's all
Gotcha.
nicotine. It's all nicotine,
Gotcha.
or whatever else it is.
Gotcha. And it's
Yeah.
something that we don't want to use
Yeah. Just let's
because we
make
don't know. If we don't
yeah,
know, we don't want it.
let's make a different decision.
Right. I agree. I agree. So I will go ahead and close us out for tonight, since there isn't anyone else that has posed a question or comment for you. So again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us on tonight's Zoom. We appreciate your participation. Each week, you are available to connect with us for more informative presentations and discussions. Once again, I am Tina Folston Hayes, the Parent Academy Specialist for Educational Equity and Outreach for the Alachua County Public Schools. And I look forward to seeing you here next Thursday. And without further ado, I will let you go, Miss Christie. Thank you so much for providing us with so much information. We appreciate you. And for everyone else, have a good night.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good night, everyone.